My beloved, come close now. Sit with me for a moment. Let us speak of something small and sacred. Salt. Simple, white, and forgotten on the back of your kitchen shelf. But oh, don't be fooled by its silence. This little mineral holds truths as ancient as the earth and as divine as the breath of God. Let me tell you the secrets. Let me unwrap the mystery. Secret 1. Salt preserves what matters. In ancient times, salt was more precious than gold. It kept the meat from spoiling, the fish from decay, the covenant from fading. God said in Leviticus 2:13, "With all thine offerings that shalt offer salt." Why? Because what is sacred must be preserved. What is holy must be protected. Salt was God's signature, sealing the offering. And so, child of God, when he places salt upon your life, he's saying, you are worth preserving. Your soul, your purpose, your testimony, they shall not rot, they shall endure. Oh, my dear sweet soul, let me tell you something so old and yet so alive, so silent and yet so strong. It's about salt. Yes, salt, not sugar, not spice, not honey nor oil, but salt. That small, simple thing you toss into your pot without a second thought. That humble grain you brush off the edge of your plate. It's not glamorous. It's not grand. But, my child, it is divine. Long before there were palaces of marble or pyramids of stone, long before gold glittered on the necks of queens or silver sparkled in royal halls, there was salt. When people traded in spices and silk, salt held its own. It preserved the food. It preserved the covenant. It preserved the people. And that's the first secret of salt. Salt preserves. You see, in the olden days, before there were deep freezers and airtight packages, before people could twist a knob and chill their meat, salt was the protector of life. You had a harvest of fish. You salted it. You brought in the lamb. You rubbed it down with salt. Why? Because the world was warm and wild, and rot was always nearby. And yet, with salt, life lingered. With salt, what would have been lost was kept. Now, my child, don't you see, you and I, we are meat in the Master's hand, living flesh, fragile and flawed, and this world, oh, it will spoil you if you let it. It will rot your peace, decay your dreams, stink up your soul with jealousy, comparison, bitterness, and fear. But here comes the Lord. Here comes God with his handful of holy salt, sprinkling preservation over your purpose, covering your character in protection, sealing your spirit in his eternal covenant. Leviticus 2:13 said this, "With all your offerings you shall offer salt." You hear that? God didn't want a gift without preservation. He didn't want praise without purity. You could bring him your harvest, your wealth, your grain, your oil, but without salt, it meant nothing, because God doesn't want temporary. He wants what lasts. You see, we live in a throwaway generation. People throw away friendships, faith, family. They walk away when it gets hard. They run when the fire rises. They disappear when the weight gets heavy. But not salt stays. Salt says, I'm here to preserve what matters. Oh, beloved, some of you don't even realize the reason you're still standing today is because someone in your bloodline was salt. A praying grandmother, a fasting mother, an uncle who walked with God. They stood in the gap. They lifted your name. They called on God and sprinkled your future with spiritual preservation. And because of their salt, your life didn't rot away. You didn't lose your mind. You didn't die in that storm. You didn't fall when you were supposed to. Because salt kept you. You see, when God marks you with salt, the decay has to turn around. When the enemy comes sniffing for your soul, when bitterness knocks at the door, when loneliness clutches your chest at midnight, there is something about God's salt that pushes back. It says, not this one. This one is preserved for glory. This one is mine. Don't think you've lasted this long because of your own strength. No, no. It's because God salted your story. That time you were about to give up and didn't. Salt. That moment you almost let the bitterness eat you alive, but peace entered the room. Salt. That season when you should have lost everything, but somehow God held you together. Salt. It's invisible, but it's real. It's tasteless in the spiritual, but its power is undeniable. Salt doesn't shout. Salt doesn't show off. Salt just works. And my God, don't we need more of that? In a world obsessed with likes and follows and applause, may we be salt, quiet but eternal. Subtle but saving. Now, let me tell you this, too, salt ain't always comfortable. Have you ever rubbed salt into a wound? Oh, it stings. It burns. It makes you cry. But it also cleanses. It kills the infection. It stops the festently. Sometimes God uses salt to preserve you through pain. He lets you hurt, not to harm you, but to heal you. He lets the sting come before the blessing. He allows discomfort so that you don't decay in silence. That betrayal. Salt. That season of being alone. Salt. That hard no, you didn't understand until later. Salt. He was preserving your calling, keeping your heart soft, guarding your soul from spiritual rot. Now listen to me, because I want you to hear this like thunder on a still day. You are worth preserving. You are worth keeping. You are worth saving. God didn't make you to be disposable. He didn't breathe his holy wine into you just for you to be tossed aside. No, he salted your spirit. He set eternity in your bones. And now you, yes you, are the salt of the earth. Preserve what matters. Preserve your values. Preserve your peace. Preserve your dignity. Preserve your joy in a world that thrives on drama and decay. Let them run after what fades. You hold tight to what lasts. Because you know what they never told you. Salt doesn't just season. Salt doesn't just sting. Salt preserves. And beloved, that is no small thing. That is legacy, power, that is God. Amen. Ah, beloved, lean your ear in closer. Come a little nearer to the fire of these words, for what I'm about to share with you is not merely a whisper from the wind, nor just the echo of an old truth. It is the voice of the Spirit calling you to remember what has always been. Let us speak now of healing, of restoration, of how salt. Yes, salt was not just meant for your food, but for your freedom. Salt purifies. Oh yes, child. That plain little crystal sitting on your table has been cleansing long before modern medicine had a name. It has been a purifier, a sanctifier, a healer in the hands of both the poor and the powerful. Now I want you to come with me, not in body but in soul, to the dusty roads of Jericho. The sun is heavy in the sky, the land is weary, and the people are desperate. Their water, the source of life, is poisoned, bitter, barren. The crops are dying, the babies are crying, the land cannot produce. The people are perishing. And here walks the prophet Elisha. He sees the pain in their eyes. He hears the weariness in their voices. They've tried everything they knew. They've drawn from wells that once ran sweet. They've prayed, they've cried, they've waited. And what does the man of God ask for? Not oil, wine, not incense. He says, bring me a new bowl and put salt in it. Mercy.
Do you see that, salt?
Now, you and I both knows don't sweeten water. Salt don't turn bitter into blessed. Salt doesn't change the chemistry of a spring, not in the natural. But oh, when God steps into the natural, he performs the supernatural. So Elisha takes that bowl, walks to the spring, and pours the salt into the very heart of the problem. And then he speaks not his own words, but the words of the Most High. Thus saith the Lord, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from thence any more death or barren land. And just like that, the waters were healed, the land revived, the people restored, not because of the salt in itself, but because of what the salt represented. It represented God's hand. It represented divine intervention. It represented purity coming into contact with pollution and declaring, you will not die like this. Oh, don't miss the power in that. You've got some waters in your life, don't you? Some bitter places. Some dried up places. Some sources that used to flow freely, but now seem stopped up with pain. You've cried over them. You've worked on them. You've tried to pray the bitterness away, but still, the taste of trauma lingers. Let me tell you something. Sugar, sometimes what you need ain't a bigger blessing. It's a handful of holy salt. God will take something small and sacred, something the world deems ordinary, and he will purify your very source. Not your symptoms, not your surface, but the spring, the root, the deep down place. See, when salt enters in, it doesn't just sit on top, it goes down. It works from the inside out. It scrubs what you can't reach. It purifies what you forgot was even there. God is like that. He won't just clean up your image. He wants to heal your soul. He won't just fix your face to help you smile for the public. He'll fix the pain that made you frown in the dark. Sometimes his healing will sting. Sometimes the salt of his truth burns. Oh yes, truth will hurt before it heals. But don't you confuse pain for punishment. Don't you confuse the burning for betrayal. Because God's salt cleanses. And sometimes he will pour it right into the spot you tried to hide. That heartbreak you buried under laughter. That memory you buried under busy schedules. That bitterness you baptized in religion. But God says, no more bitter water. No more dry land. No more spiritual famine. I'm healing you from the inside. And how does he do it? With salt. With truth. With presence. With promises. Sometimes he'll send you a word you didn't want to hear. Sometimes he'll place a person in your life who challenges your comfort. Sometimes he'll isolate you. Not to punish you, but to pour salt into your soil and make you fruitful again. Child, there's healing in the salt. There's cleansing in the confrontation. There's life after the bitterness. You don't have to keep drinking from poisoned wells. You don't have to settle for barren ground. You don't have to stay stuck in cycles of spiritual drought. God is still purifying. God is still healing bitter waters. God is still speaking to springs and saying, live again. And let me tell you this. When God heals a thing, it stays healed. Elisha didn't have to keep coming back. He didn't pour salt week after week, month after month. He did it once, with God's authority. And that was enough. Because when God touches your source, you ain't gotta fake it no more. You ain't gotta patch up the cracks with performance. You ain't gotta pretend the pain isn't there. You are healed, truly, deeply, irrevocably. And yes, there may still be scars. But baby, scars don't mean the wound is open. Scars mean you survived. Scars mean the salt worked. So today I want you to trust the salt, trust the cleansing, trust the process. Let him pour his healing into you. Let him make you whole where you've only known brokenness. Let him sweeten the waters that life made bitter. Because, child, you were never meant to be barren. You were never meant to be poisoned by your past. You were never meant to die thirsty. God says, I have healed these waters, and that includes you. Amen. Come closer now, child. Let me take your hand soft and tender, and lead you through a truth that has stood tall through the centuries like an oak unbothered by the storm. I want to talk to you about covenant, about promise, about that old and sacred agreement between you and the Most High, a vow not etched just in ink and parchment, but in spirit and in salt. See, in our modern world we use salt so casually. A shake here, a sprinkle there. We toss it over our shoulder for luck. We season our meals without a second thought. But in the days of old, back when sandals kicked up dust on desert paths, and the prophets heard God like thunder, salt meant something more. Oh yes, far more than flavor. Salt meant faithfulness. You see, when two people made a covenant in the ancient world, a binding agreement that could not be undone by wind or whim, they sealed it with salt. They'd bring their bowls of salt to the table, each man reaching into his own supply, and they would mix the grains together. My salt into your bowl, your salt into mine, and then they would stir. Now pause there. Breathe that in. Because once those grains were mixed, no man could ever separate them again. You couldn't tell whose was whose. It was finished. The covenant was forever. That's what salt meant. Irrevocable, unbreakable, eternal. God, in his infinite tenderness and unmatched majesty, used this same imagery when he spoke to his people. He didn't just say, "I'll be your God." No, he said, "It is a covenant of salt forever before the Lord." Numbers 18, line 9, forever. Not until you get tired. Not until you make a mistake. Not until the winds shift or your feelings change. Forever. Isn't that something? In a world that breaks promises like twigs underfoot, where marriages fall, friendships fade, and trust is shattered like stained glass dropped on stone, God still keeps covenant. And not just any kind, a covenant of salt. Child, that means he poured some of his into your bowl, and he took some of yours into his. That means what you give him, he holds sacred. Your prayers, even the broken ones. Your tears, even the silent ones. Your worship, even when it's trembling. When you committed your life to God, you entered into more than religion. You entered into relationship, and not just a passing acquaintance, but a holy contract sealed with salt and signed with spirit. Let me tell you what that means for you. It means you are his. When the world calls you by your wounds, he calls you by your worth. When people try to reduce you to your past, he reminds you of his promise. When your own mind whispers lies in the dark, his covenant still speaks louder. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I have called you by name. You are mine. And just like the ancient covenant, this one cannot be undone. Your name is written in a place where no devil can reach and no failure can erase. God has mingled his salt with yours. Oh, don't you see it now? Even when you wander, his covenant holds. Even when you stumble, his promise remains. Even when you are faithless, he is still faithful, because he cannot deny himself. And what is himself, if not faithful, if not holy, if not the very definition of steadfast? God made a salt covenant with David too. Do you remember? The shepherd boy turned king, the psalmist with the harp and the broken heart. God said to him, I have given the kingdom to you and your descendants forever by a covenant of salt. I 2 Chronicles 13:5. Why salt? Because God was saying, this isn't temporary. I'm not like men who promise today and forget tomorrow. My word is eternal. My favor is generational. My promise will outlive your pain. Beloved, he says the same to you. You might look around and see delay. You might see detour. But God sees destiny, because covenant does not bow to circumstance. That marriage you're praying over, that child who's lost, that healing that hasn't come yet, he has not forgotten. He cannot forget. You are bound to him by salt and spirit. Now I want you to consider something sacred. In the temple, every grain offering the priests gave to God had to include salt. Every one. Not some. Not just the ones they liked. Not just on special occasions. No, every offering required salt. Why? Because salt meant sincerity. Salt meant covenant. Salt meant, this is not just a performance. This is real. This is from my heart. You can't fake salt. It's got weight. It's got presence. It lingers on the tongue. It penetrates. God doesn't want just hollow words. He wants your covenant heart. He wants your salt. So when you offer him praise, let it be salty. When you give him your time, your energy, your devotion, let it carry weight. Let it come from the depths. Let it cost you something. Because in return, he will meet you not with shadow, not with silence, but with presence. He will flood your life with the kind of peace that cannot be bought, the kind of joy that isn't shaken by a storm. He will say, I see your offering, and I remember our salt, I remember our covenant. Oh, and child, let me tell you something beautiful. In the New Testament, Jesus looks at his disciples, those dusty-footed dreamers who still didn't quite understand, and he says to them, have salt in yourselves, and be at peace with one another. So Mark 9:5, do you hear it? He's saying, don't just season others. Season yourself. Let your spirit be purified. Let your life reflect your covenant, and let peace, not pride, be your path. Because when you know you're in covenant with God, you don't have to fight for attention. You don't have to beg for love. You don't have to fear what the future holds. Your future has already been salted by His promise. So today, my dear heart, remember this: you're not forgotten. You're not abandoned. You're not just another name in the crowd. You are His. You are held. You are salted. And what God seals with salt stays sealed forever. Amen. Let me speak plainly to your soul now, child. Let me sit beside you in the warmth of this moment and tell you a thing that may seem small, but carries the weight of heaven. I want to talk to you about salt as a preserver, not just in your pantry, not just in your cooking pot, but in your life, your spirit, your walk with God. See, in ancient times, they didn't have refrigerators humming in the kitchen. No electric coolers humming softly through the night. No plastic-wrapped packages from the supermarket aisles. No, beloved, they had something far more simple. Something powerful. They had salt. When the fishermen hauled in their catch from the deep waters, glistening and fresh, they didn't have long before decay came creeping in. And so, they turned to salt. They rubbed it in, they packed it around, they wrapped their catch in its purity, because salt knew how to keep things from spoiling. Salt preserved, salt protected. Salt prolonged what would have otherwise been lost to time and temperature. And oh, what a message that is for you and me. For just as salt preserves flesh from decay, so too does the Spirit of God, working through your obedience, your faith, and yes, your salty soul. Preserve righteousness in a world that is rotting by the hour. You, child of God, are a preserver in the earth. You are here to hold back the tide of moral decay. You are here to keep hope alive where it has begun to wither. You are here to stop the spiritual rot that comes when people forget who they are, and more dangerously, forget whose they are. Jesus said it so simply. You are the salt of the earth. He didn't say you might become it. He didn't say you should try to be it. He declared it. Straight, clean, and bold. You are. That means wherever you go, you are meant to bring preservation. When the world says, everything is falling apart, the salt in you says, not here, not on my watch. When anger threatens a family, you are the salt that brings peace. When bitterness creeps into a church, you are the salt that brings grace. When hopelessness shadows a community, you are the salt that brings light and love and laughter again. Salt doesn't just sit pretty. It works. It gets in deep. It changes the chemistry of everything it touches. You, child, were made to change the climate of every room you walk into. Now let me tell you something deep, because preserving righteousness ain't always easy. You will be mocked. You will be called too much or too holy. You will walk into rooms where folks have gotten used to the rot, where people have become comfortable with compromise, where nobody speaks up when wrong is done, and your very presence, just being you, standing tall with truth in your spine, will stir the atmosphere. Because salt, beloved, makes itself known. You were not made to blend in. You were made to stand out. Not with pride, not with arrogance, but with integrity. You were made to preserve what the world is throwing away: dignity, compassion, discipline, commitment, truth. Do you hear me? You are a preserver of covenant, a keeper of sacred things, a guardian of generational blessings. You might say, but I'm tired. Lord, you might say, but the world is so loud, and I feel so small. Oh, child, remember, this salt doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't shout. It doesn't shine. It simply shows up and does its work. Quiet, steady, sure. Your faithfulness in secret matters. Your late-night prayers matter. Your unseen kindness, your steady integrity, your refusal to lie when the world says it's easier. All of that, beloved, preserves what is holy. And when others forget, when they forget how to pray, forget how to forgive, Forget how to love. You be the salt that remembers. You be the salt that reminds. You be the salt that keeps the soul of the people from rotting in despair. But hear this, and hear it well. Salt that loses its flavor, Jesus said, is good for nothing. That means if you let the world water you down, if you stop standing on truth, if you compromise just to be liked, if you give up your assignment just because the path is hard, then you've lost the very essence of what makes you powerful. Child, don't lose your flavor. Don't lose your boldness. Don't lose your sweetness. Don't lose your devotion to what is right and righteous. Because God placed you here on purpose. He didn't sprinkle you randomly like seasoning on a plate. No, He placed you right where the rot tries to sneak in, right where decay is starting to take root. He placed you in the family, in the job, in the church, in the neighborhood, to preserve. And preserving isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it means saying no when everyone else says yes. Sometimes it means holding on to purity in a culture that laughs at holiness. But oh, child, when you preserve, you partner with heaven. You become part of God's eternal plan. You become a line of defense in a world that's forgetting the sacred. So don't shrink. Don't silence your salt. Don't dilute your faith to fit in. Instead, live boldly, walk uprightly, speak truth with love, and carry righteousness like a crown. Because this world doesn't just need louder voices. It needs seasoned ones. It needs souls that have been salted by fire, refined in prayer, and preserved in the presence of the Most High. You are that soul. You are salt. And salt, my dear, is not just a seasoning. It is a safeguard. It is a shield. It is a quiet warrior battling back the decay. And when you live like that, preserving what matters, protecting what's holy, you are walking not just in purpose, but in power. Amen. Child, let me tell you a story. One older than time, deeper than oceans, more fragrant than incense rising from the altar of the Most High. Let me speak to you about covenant, about commitment, about what it means when God sets His seal upon your life. For in the pages of the Holy Bible, salt was more than seasoning, more than a preservative. It was a sacred symbol of covenant. Yes, child, salt was holy. Salt was divine. Salt was the sign that something eternal was being spoken. Something unbreakable was being promised. When people made a covenant with one another, they didn't just shake hands or sign on dotted lines. No, they shared salt. They sat at the same table. They broke bread and sprinkled salt, saying without words, "What we have here shall not be broken. It shall not be forgotten." That is how God speaks to us. See, in the book of Leviticus, the Lord told His people, "With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt." Now I ask you, why salt? Why not gold or oil or perfume? Because salt is enduring. Salt does not rot. It doesn't sour. It doesn't spoil. It stays, it clings, it keeps. Salt is loyal, and God was saying something when He commanded salt be added to every offering. He was saying, this is not just ceremony. This is covenant. This is not just religion. This is relationship. I am with you. I will not forsake you. And I want you to remember, this bond is seasoned with something sacred. There was even something called a covenant of salt. A phrase so full of mystery and promise it makes your soul sit up straighter. When God made His promise to David that a descendant from his line would sit on the throne forever, He called it a covenant of salt. That was His way of saying, this isn't going anywhere. My word is seasoned with eternity. And now, let me bring it to your doorstep, to your life, to your heart. There are many people who will speak sweet words when the sun is shining. There are people who will promise loyalty when the wind is calm and their feet are planted firm. But the moment the ground shakes, the moment your joy falters, the moment your name is dragged through the mud, they scatter like leaves in a storm. They were never salt. They were sugar, sweet to the taste, quick to dissolve. But God, oh, child, God is salt. He stays when others flee. He holds when others break. His love is not a fleeting breeze. It is the deep hum of thunder that echoes through the canyon of your life, saying, I am still here. So when you feel alone, when you feel discarded, when the covenant others made with you has been broken, remember the salt. Remember that there is one who sits high and looks low, and his promises are not paper thin. They are rock solid, salt solid. And his covenant with you is not based on your perfection but on his character. You may falter, you may fall, you may walk away in your weakness. But he is the kind of God who seasons his covenant with salt, and that means he's coming back for you. That means he remembers. That means he's holding the pieces of your broken life like a potter with wet clay, whispering, I am not through with you yet. Now hear me, beloved. If you are walking with God, then you too are part of that covenant of salt. That means your yes should be yes, and your no should be no. It means your word should carry weight. It means your promises should not be made lightly. If you say you love someone, love them with salt, not just sugar. Love them with something that endures when the storms rage and the seasons shift. This is where many fall short. They want the blessings of God, but not the burden of covenant. They want the miracles, but not the maintenance. But covenant is not made in moments of joy alone. It is made in suffering, in silence, in long nights of prayer and short breaths of faith. It is made when you say, I don't understand, Lord, but I still trust you. It is made when you whisper, though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. It is made when you weep and wait and worship all at once. Covenant is not a contract. It's not about what you can get. It's about what you can give, and give again, and give even when it hurts. It is seasoned with sacrifice. It is flavored with faithfulness. Just as God's covenant is salted, so too must your life be. You cannot serve him one day and walk away the next. You cannot praise him in public and deny him in private. You are salt, and salt does not pretend to be anything else. You must be steady. You must be loyal. You must be holy. Let every part of your life reflect the flavor of your faith. Let your relationships, your work, your worship all carry the essence of salt. Honesty, endurance, and truth. Do not give in to the culture that says everything is disposable. Love, marriage, friendship, even worship. Be different. Be sacred. Be salt. Because in the end, when everything else fades, when the glitter of the world dims, when the noise dies down and the curtains fall, what remains? The salt. The covenant. The unbreakable bond between the Creator and his beloved creation. That's you. You were made for more than just moments. You were made for meaning. You were not born for shallow connections or fleeting passions. You were born for holy fire and salt covenant. You were formed in the secret place to walk in integrity, to keep your word, to honor God with your life. So don't let the world make you forget. Don't let betrayal make you bitter. Don't let disappointment make you cynical. Remember the salt. Remember that even if people fail,